Welcome to the Policy Project Speaker Series. We are so excited to have Jayden Davis with us today. Hey, Jayden, how are you?
I am so good. Thank you, Jane. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited for everyone to get to hear from you, Jayden, because I feel like you are the heart and soul of what all the community engagement that's happening with the policy project. So it's going to be a great opportunity to dive more into that today and hear about the Focus Student Project.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. It's going to be great.
Okay, I'm going to get started with your bio.
Perfect.
So Jayden is our community engagement manager, and she recently graduated from Brigham Young University, go Cougs, where she studied public health and social impact. Working with multiple mission-driven organizations has fueled her obsession for doing data-centric good in the world. Toward the end of her undergraduate career, she got involved in local advocacy work and realized that policy can be an effective vehicle for addressing social issues from a systemic, population-based level. With a newfound passion for policy, she completed an internship as a policy analyst with the Utah Department of Commerce, where she crafted research-based policy recommendations to address the mental health crisis in Utah. Overall, the policy project's work perfectly aligns with her areas of interest: policy work, local initiatives, startup organizations. In a few years, she plans to pursue a master's of business administration to supplement her knowledge and open up more doors to make an impact. And I personally got to work with Jayden when she was an intern at the policy project before she came on as a full-time employee. And she is just amazing.
Thank you, Jane. Thanks for the intro.
Well, let's just dive into the Focus Student Project. So in November, we like to focus on advocacy and kind of roll out for everyone and kind of deep dive into what the Focus Student Project is, or whatever the project is we're working on. And so let's just start from the top. It's kind of exciting that we have not one, but two projects this year. This is the first time that we've ever done that. So why don't we just dive into one of those projects, and you tell us a little bit about where we're at and what it is and who's sponsoring the bill and all that good stuff.
Great. That would be awesome. Let me get some slides ready to go. Just give me 1 second so you guys have a visual. I know sometimes policy can get a little bit dense, so it's nice to have some visuals to guide us. So just give me 1 quick second. Let's see. Here we go. Jane, can you see my screen? Does that look okay?
Yes, I can. And we're still on here. So if you want to, we can take the whole screen, or we can share with our pictures up. So it's great.
Either way is great. Okay. Awesome. So like Jane said, this is our first time ever taking on 2 policy initiatives, which is really exciting. And I think it's going to be a model here on out with the policy project, kind of taking on a package of policy. So that's really exciting. And we branded these 2 policies under the Focus Student Project because students are so distracted by their cell phones in schools, which limits their ability to learn in the classroom. And then when a student is hungry, they simply cannot learn. If you've ever heard of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like the bottom tier is like just safety, hunger, all of those things. So if those are not met, their ability to, have more high function brain activity just simply cannot happen. So anyway, a hungry student cannot learn and a distracted student cannot learn. And that's what the Focus Student Project is all about, is helping our students have a better learning environment and maximizing all of the investments that we already make into our educational system here in Utah. So that's a little bit of a background.
Thank you.
And then, Jane, do you want me to just hop right into the bills, kind of what they look like?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Great. And if I
say, and I might stop you with a question, or
yes,
but keep going.
Just totally interrupt me if there's any questions, or if there's any gaps, like just stop me and we can chat through it so that it's not just me fire hosing info at you.
Great.
So this is the first problem that we're addressing is phones in schools. And this is Senate Bill devices in public schools. We don't have a bill number quite yet for this, but probably in the next couple of weeks, and if not at the very beginning of the legislative session in January. So very exciting. This is a little bit of background, and there's so much data and so much research behind just these like 4 statistics. But 97% of students with phones use them during the school day. Students on average receive 237 notifications from their phones during the school day. Like,
Wow.
You cannot focus if your phone is going off that many times during the school day, right?
Yeah.
Test scores are 14% lower among the lowest achieving students and the highest need students when phones are in the classroom. And then this is one that like really, really resonates with me, just given kind of this loneliness epidemic that's happening across, the United States, but student loneliness has doubled since 2012, which is when like the rise of the smartphone started happening. So I think students are not only hungry for food, their bellies are not only hungry for food, students are hungry for connection and friendship and learning and growth and all of those good things that come when we're present in the moment. So the problem is there.
I recently just read a statistic that they did some research and they asked teenagers if they wished that cell phones would have like been invented. Like, and most of them, even though they're spending on average 8 hours a day, the average teenager spends on their phone, most of them said they wish that they had never been created because they are so dependent on them. They're so addicted to them. And their lives they're worse off. They're lonelier. They're doing poorly in school or whatever it is. They're distracted. And it just is, I love this bill because it will help students to reclaim that control over their phone.
Yeah. And I think we all can relate with that. Like, I know I can. When I spend 3 hours scrolling on Reels, I'm like, what did I just do? Like, that was the worst use of my time. And then I feel like garbage after. So I think we could all kind of use a little shift in this direction, kind of take an inventory of our use of our mobile devices and how that really benefits our lives. So I'm a fan of this as well, Jane.
Love it.
Okay, then we can kind of get into some of the meat of the bill. And this is where you can ask some more questions, Jane, because it kind of gets a little bit confusing. Okay. But essentially what the bill does, it just requires that every school district, also called an LEA on this slide, a local education authority or a school district, must create a policy around phone use in schools. So every district can kind of choose to adopt a policy that works best for their student populations and their communities because they know their communities best. We don't want to come from like this top-down level and just give this like blanket policy that might not work for everybody. I think that would maybe have some unintended consequences to just give like one policy that everyone must adopt. So it's really cool because it's customizable to the community, school, and students' needs. And every policy that is written by a district has to have a few exceptions. Those include like health exceptions. If a student has diabetes, like their phone is their best tracking device for their blood sugar and like glucose levels. So if a student has any health complications, they would have access to their phone. Or educational needs, like if a student has an individualized education plan or IEP, there would be some exceptions there. And then the last thing is it ensures that students can access their phones during an imminent threat or danger. So that is a big topic that's brought up a lot, is safety in schools. And we want to make sure that parents can communicate with their students if something of this nature happens during the school day.
A question I have is, are Apple Watches and other devices like that included in the policy?
Yes. It's like smartwatches, smartphones and other emerging technology. I think that's what's written into the bill currently. So students would still have access to their personal laptops, but those other types of technology that are really highly distracting would be limited as well. That's a good question, Jane. Any other questions about this?
I love that you clarified that each district will have control over how they basically specify the bill. They can, and all the details about when you get your phone, when you don't, will be taken into consideration for that area. And I was just going to ask, if people want to give input on that, what would you suggest they do? Can they call their district and give input on, or is this something that local school boards won't have control over?
Yeah, I do think it would be beneficial to even call like your principal or other school administrators and ask, like, what are you currently doing in your school to limit cell phones? Because most teachers are taking some approaches. You know, I think in most schools, every single teacher has a different policy. So that can be kind of overwhelming, not only for teachers, but for students when in their math class, like they have to put their phone in a cubby, but in their English class, they can keep their phone in their backpack. But then in their history class, they can use their phone freely. I think that's a little bit confusing for students. So anyway, back to your point, Jane, people can totally call their principal or administrators and ask, like, what are you currently doing? And then what are your thoughts on a policy? What do you think would be helpful? Like, have you heard about like this statewide policy that the policy project is working on? Like, what are your thoughts? What do you think would be a good approach? I think we're totally open to kind of hearing what the menu of different approaches are that schools are taking. And I think a really important part of this conversation is like, I don't think the word ban is good for this. Like, it's not a cell phone ban. It's like, addressing the cell phone problem in the way that works best for schools. That might be, a little magnetized pouch where students put their phone in. It could just be like a cubby at the front of the classroom. It could be a variety of different options, but I think it will all be customized to meet the community's needs the best. I mean, I've said that 100 times, but yeah, I think a good way to engage would be reaching out to your principal and asking what's going on.
Great. Perfect.
Great. And teacher perspectives, like I was saying before, this is a huge burden currently on teachers' backs of being like the police of the cell phone. So just kind of having a district-wide policy would really lift a load, a burden off of their backs to just know that this is streamlined across their school and across their district. So they definitely support bills like this. And there's so many positive outcomes. I'm sure we could have a slide that's like 3 times the size of this, but reduced distractions, reduced bullying, improved mental health, enhanced classroom environments, like more engaging conversations, increased face-to-face interaction with other students, and then improved academic performance. So there's a lot of really positive outcomes that happen when we just take into account, like, is our cell phone use helping or hindering our learning environment?
It seems pretty obvious, doesn't it? Like, if you're able to pay attention, you're going to learn more, and there's just so many benefits. So that's great.
Yeah, I think it will be really, really impactful. Any other questions before we kind of move into the second piece of the Focus Student Project, Jane?
Do you want to tell us where we're at with where the bill is at and who is the sponsor and some of those legislative details?
For sure. I would love to talk about that. So Senator Lincoln Fillmore and Representative Doug Welton are the bill sponsors for this cell phone bill. Let me go back here so it's not confusing. So Senator Fillmore, he's from the Taylorsville area, and then Representative Welton is down in like Utah County, like the Salem and Payson area. But they're sponsoring the bill. The bill is currently in draft form, and you can actually access it online on the Senate website. If you even just search devices in public schools, it should pull up. There's still some changes we're wanting to make to the bill language, and we're hoping to get those done before the legislative session, just because the legislative legislative session is only 45 days long, so it's fast and furious. And you kind of want your bill to be as polished as possible before it even is presented in a committee hearing. So we're working to kind of make a few edits to the bill. So as it stands right now is not where it's going to land at the end of the day, but it's in a really good, like, strong draft form if you want to check it out. I think those are most of the updates on that bill.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like that was great. Great overview and some good details. And I think we can move on to the next.
Perfect.
Combat Utah.
Great. So the second bill we're working on is food security amendments. And this is a compilation of a bunch of different things that we're working to mitigate food insecurity specifically for students and children in the state of Utah. Representative Tyler Clancy, he is our bill sponsor, and then also Senator Kirk Coolmore. They're our bill sponsors for this particular bill, which is excellent. Representative Clancy is a massive champion for this issue and is really well connected with a lot of, like, these food hunger experts. So he's been a really, really great partner. And also Senator Kirk Coolmore has been a great champion with our projects in the past. So we're really lucky to have both of them working alongside us on this bill. But I'll give kind of a similar background. It's a problem. I think everyone can just get behind, like, 1 in 6 Utah children is hungry. That's not okay. In a state that has, like, one of the best economies in the country, like, this is not okay. And it's actually so shocking. Like, you would look around and never expect that, like, 1 in 6 students is really struggling to know when or how they're going to get their next meal. So it's a problem and we need to address it. And the bill is really interesting because it has, like I was saying, a lot of different facets to it. And I think each of them will really help mitigate this issue. So we're going to eliminate the reduced cost category. So anyone who qualifies for free and reduced lunch, it will just be free. And
I love that.
It's awesome.
Like, yeah. Why are we parceling out who can you get a reduced or you get free? It just seems like everybody should be covered. So I love this.
Yeah, I think it will be really impactful. And a lot of the data shows that the families who are in the reduced price category are the ones that are most likely to accrue school meal debt that they can't pay off, and then ends up creating a lot of, like, barriers down the road. So I think this will be really impactful. The other thing in the bill is securing ongoing funding for the summer EBT program. So what this means is that any student who qualifies for free and reduced lunch, and now just free lunch, hopefully, will receive $120 on a card during the summer months, and it will be parceled out month by month. And this card will just be able to be used for food only. But just making sure that our students and our children have access to food, even when they're not in school, I think will probably be the most impactful thing that this bill accomplishes. And
That's
then
incredible. I think what a huge gift to all of these families who rely on the free lunch program.
It's massive. I think it will be really impactful. The last two things, and these are a little bit more logistical, but just making sure that the policy addresses the shame and stigma around this free lunch. So when a student goes and gets their lunch, and if they are, like, qualify for a free lunch, there wouldn't be any, like, visual indicator that they have free lunch, or they don't have to, like, perform chores or help the janitorial staff to compensate for their lunch. So just making sure that this is a very dignified thing and that students don't feel embarrassed or shameful about, accessing the resources that they need and should be available to them. And the last thing, maybe the thing I'm most excited about, is we're kind of trying to streamline the process for students to enroll in the no-cost lunch program. We've talked to a ton of people, a ton of community members, a ton of experts, and this is a really big problem where students clearly qualify for this and need this, but don't always have a parent in a position to, sign those papers, bring in the paperwork, so they never end up getting these resources even though they qualify for them. So there's going to be something built into the bill to ensure that those students can still get these resources, even if they don't have, the support they need to get to that point, if that makes sense.
Yes. I think that there's probably so many more students that will receive this free food because of that one piece. Streamlining the enrollment process will be so beneficial to, I think it's going to be thousands of kids whose parents haven't figured out how to do the paperwork or what needed to be done. Where does the funding for this come from? I feel like that might be a question that people want to know.
Yeah, there's a few different sources that the funding comes from. For the summer EBT program, it's federal funding. So the state kicks in $600,000 and then the federal government kicks in $32 million. So the return on investment is awesome. And the summer EBT program is actually funded for summer of 2025. But we're hoping to secure ongoing funding for this program. So it's not just the upcoming summer, but summers in perpetuity. So that's where that funding comes from. And the reduced costs category comes from actually the alcohol tax, which is really interesting. The tax on alcohol purchases in the state of Utah ends up contributing to this free and reduced price lunch. So yeah. Any other questions on that, Jane?
That's great. Thank you.
Kind of interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know that. So that's great.
Yeah. Oh, let's see. I think those are most of the things regarding the bills. Any questions?
I think that you've covered it really well. When do we expect, if this passes, when will it go into effect?
That's a great.
Sometimes there's a delayed effect as we get through the system and work with USBE.
Mm-hmm. So I think hopefully when these two bills pass, with cell phones, I would expect it to be the start of the 2025-26 school year. And there might be some delays with that, but that's kind of my anticipated, like September of 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And then food security amendments, I'm hoping the same. And we do have to kind of be flexible and flowing and aware of, the limitations, but I think that would be set up. So the start of the school year of 25-26, when both of these opportunities would be available to students, but there might be some delays there too.
Some hoping, right? Like everything goes smoothly and it can be put into place. Well, that's great. This is amazing. I want to turn our attention to how our community can engage. So if you're watching this, you obviously care about this policy and have heard about the policy project, but maybe you haven't engaged yet. But this is a topic that you feel passionate about. What would you suggest that someone does that wants to get more involved?
That is a great question, Jane. Here we go. A couple of suggestions and so many things beyond this one slide. But number one, you can sign up to be a community champion, whether you're 15 years old or 85 years old, like we need you and we want you. So you can go to our website. It's just thepolicyproject.org/volunteers. And you can sign up to volunteer there. And then you'll be put on like a bi-monthly newsletter of different volunteer opportunities and have other awesome perks of being part of that group. The other thing is write a letter to your legislator. And you might not think that this is impactful. It might feel like, oh, I'm just like putting this out into the universe. But no, like this is hugely impactful and your voice matters. And it really goes the distance when a legislator receives a handwritten note. Like handwritten notes are kind of like archaic
in the past, for sure.
So they're even more special. But if you want information of how to contact your legislator, we'll post on the Policy Project Instagram here in the next week or so some instructions of how to do that. But that is hugely impactful and really, truly, we mean it. The other thing is...
I was going to say too, it doesn't need to be a long letter. It can be, I support this bill or these bills and this is why, and sign your name and it's good enough. Like,
For
does
sure.
not need to be long. And it can be an email too, if you don't want to do a handwritten.
Absolutely. Emails are awesome.
Yeah.
And I always have to tell myself, like, perfection is the enemy of good, because I can be a perfectionist, but sometimes we just need to do it. Like the 80% rule, like we just need to do it. It doesn't need to be like a profound essay, although we wouldn't be opposed, but it does not have to be that way to be impactful. So thanks for saying that, Jane. I think that's important. And then the last thing is we're kicking off our statewide tour for these two bills. So every Wednesday, one Tuesday, for 5 weeks, we'll be traveling across the state of Utah from Cache County down to St. George and advocating for these bills. So if you want to engage in one of these community gatherings, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to Jane. It's just Jayden at the Policy Project or Jane at the Policy Project, and we'll make sure that you get put on one of these planning committees. And if you don't want to be part of a planning committee, just come. Like, your body and your support is so important. Like, showing up is so important. A lot of people can pretend to care, but when you actually show up and have your body, like, in this venue, in a space that you might not feel so comfortable with, like, that speaks so much louder than even just, pretending to care is showing up. So if you want to engage in that way, we would love it.
I love that we are going to have a service project at each of our events. And so if you're looking for a way to engage and do service, it's a great night.
Yeah, it will be really awesome, and hopefully interactive with a service component. We'll, engage with legislators a little bit, and then there will be like an advocacy training where you can kind of learn, like, how can I advocate in my community with my specific strengths. So it should be really actionable and fun and not so boring. So we really love to have.
Always fun.
They're always fun, always with red and dancing and balloons. So come. It's a really approachable way to start getting involved in policy and advocacy.
That's so great. Now, tell us the timeline for these bills. We're going to have, I think, remind us when the legislative session starts and when we can expect to hear about these bills passing. Yeah.
The first day of the 2025 Utah legislative session is January 21st, Monday, January 21st. I hope I'm getting that right.
I even asked you this question, but I'm also amazed that you know the answer. I don't know. Is it also okay?
Yes. I don't know. I might be telling you lies, but hopefully that's correct. I think it is. But then the legislative session is so short. It's 45 days long here in the state of Utah. So it'll wrap up at the very beginning of March. So January 21st to the beginning of March is like go time. This is when the legislators are meeting up at the Capitol and passing like over 600 bills. So it's really crazy. It's really intense time for our legislators and our state leadership. But we'll keep you informed. We can't really know until 24 or 48 hours in advance of when our bills will be in committee or when they'll receive a vote. But we'll for sure keep everyone posted, through email and through text and through social media, so that you can either join virtually or join in person and watch these happen. And I think that coming to these committee hearings is one of the most life-changing things, at least for me. I've always kind of viewed policy and politics as something that's just not for me. I was oh, there's just so much contention. That's not really my vibe. Just a lot of people who are, want power, or I don't know. I just kind of viewed it as this negative thing. But last year, being able to sit in our Senate committee hearing for the Safe Child Project to, protect our children from child sexual abuse completely changed my life. It was incredible. Community members getting up and sharing their testimony and sharing how much we need this bill. And then the legislators in the committee, agreeing with that and sharing their personal testimonies as well. It just really solidified in my mind that we live in an incredible country and incredible government where our voices can be heard, and they really are like weighted heavily when we, are courageous and show up at the Capitol and, speak our truths and speak our experiences. Like those go really far, even though that might not be part of the messaging of today. It's always like, oh, like your voice isn't valuable, but it actually is. And I was so grateful I got to see that firsthand. And I hope that you guys can see that too.
Yeah. And if you're not close by, they record them. So you can watch remotely that whole process. And it is, I know for me last year, I wasn't able to be there in person, and I watched from my phone as these people shared, and it really was so impactful. And something I love about our country is that our voices matter and that we can share them and have an impact. And this has been so incredible. And didn't know if there's any last things you want to talk about community engagement or this advocacy process, but I just think that the work that we're doing is so important, and that we need everybody's voice to join with us as we advocate for hungry students and distracted students and kids who really want to reclaim control over their life and dependency on their phone for buffering in situations. I think that as we do this in our schools, we will see students who regain confidence and ability to focus and ability to engage with the community around them. And I think that we'll begin to see a turnaround in our mental health crisis. And I just feel really excited about it.
Yay, me too, Jane. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me about this.